Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Nigeria's main opposition accuses the ruling party of trying to rig presidential elections. President Muhammadu Buhari's taken an early lead in the count, but there are concerns that dozens may have been killed in pockets of violence linked to Saturday's polls. And the count not in, but a rouse already broken out in Senegal. President Macky Sall's camps declared him the winner of Sunday's polls, but his opposition has said that there is still a chance of a runoff vote. And the UN's top court says Britain should give up control of the Chagos Islands as soon as possible. The UK illegally took over the Indian Ocean archipelago from Mauritius and evicted thousands of islanders between 1968 and 1972, says the ICJ. But first, Nigeria's incumbent leader, Muhammadu Buhari, has taken an early lead as the count from the weekend's presidential polls continues. His main rival is the opposition's PDP's Atiku Abubakar. They accuse Buhari's APC party of colluding with the Electoral Commission in a bid to manipulate results. Now, Saturday's polls took place a week late after having been postponed at the last moment. But despite the extra time, it wasn't smooth going, and civil society groups have called for an inquiry into the overall poor management, as they put it, of the vote. Now, they've also raised concerns about the deaths of at least 39 people who were killed. Chika Odoa tells us more about why the PDP is accusing the APC and the Electoral Commission of trying to rig the vote.
The PDP party has gotten into some detail. They're saying that there were just too many cases of irregularities, too many incidents of ballot box being snatched. And they've also come out to say that some of the election officials in various states were actually harassed. This has also been expressed by United States official as well. A United States lawmaker has come out to say that some of the results are being tampered with because some election officials in various states were facing intense pressure by some of the parties or some of the politicians to actually change some of the results. So this is why the PDP is actually saying that it's rejecting what is being coming out. They're also saying that Buhari's party, the APC, is actually inflating the results in his favor.
Now, monitors estimate that at least 39 people were killed in election-related violence over the weekend. That's a lot of people. What went wrong?
The election violence actually came as quite a shock because just the previous week, President Buhari gave a very stern warning to anyone who is being caught trying to steal ballot boxes or trying to intimidate voters. However, his warning fell on deaf ears because there were lots of thugs who were armed with machetes, armed with knives in areas like Lagos and in the southern city of Port Harcourt who did come out to really disrupt the election. So what really happened was that there were some political parties who were backing some of these thugs, these political thugs, to really hinder the elections and to destroy some of the ballot boxes that were actually already on its way to the National Collation Center here in Abuja.
And the vote itself, the vote that happened over the weekend, that was actually a week later from the original date of the election. Did that week-long delay affect voter turnout at all?
Unfortunately, it did. This election, the voter turnout was much lower than it was in 2015. It was lower than it was in 2003. So over the past 2 years, voter turnout has been getting lower and lower. Observers are saying that about 40% of registered voters came out this time around. And this reduction of voters coming out to actually cast their ballot really is an indication of the growing distrust between the political class and the masses here in Nigeria. They're really just not very positive, not very hopeful about the process. And you actually can't blame them because in the past there have been so many series of irregularities, election fraud. So this is being indicated in what we see as far as people coming out to vote. It was not the most pleasing number. Again, about 40% of people who were registered actually came out to vote.
Well, full results from Senegal's presidential vote over the weekend aren't expected until Friday. Nevertheless, a row over the count has already broken out. President Macky Sall's camps declared him the winner of Sunday's polls, but his opposition has said there is still a chance of a runoff vote. Sall's angling for a second term against his main challengers of former Prime Minister Idrissa Seck and MP Ousmane Sonko. Nadia Massey's in Dakar for us. She tells us more about whether claims that Sall won outright are just bravado.
It could be just big talk, or there could be something to it. At this stage, we simply don't know because vote counting is very much still underway. We heard from the Electoral Commission earlier on today reiterating that regional results will be available from noon tomorrow and final national results are not until Friday. The Electoral Commission at that time then issuing what was effectively a slap on the wrist towards the Prime Minister and the government, saying they aren't at liberty themselves to announce their own figures. They need to wait for the official ones to come through. Now, when we heard from the Prime Minister yesterday saying Macky Sall had won this election outright without the need for a second round, there was a good degree of outrage among the opposition parties. You had Idrissa Seck and Ousmane Sonko coming together in an unprecedented joint press conference to announce that they say Macky Sall is trying to rig this election and that they do believe that the opposition has enough to go through to the second round.
Now, Senegal's done pretty well under Macky Sall. So what are his rivals saying needs to be done differently? Why should anyone vote for them rather than stick with Sall?
Well, on the economy, for example, yes, it is going strong under Macky Sall, but the opposition says that while there's plenty of financial wealth coming into the country from foreign backers, particularly towards the oil industry, much of that wealth isn't yet trickling down to ordinary people. 1 in 2 people in Senegal still lives in poverty, and it's been the cornerstone of both Idrissa Seck and Ousmane Sonko to try and raise the standard of living in the country and to ensure that more young people are employed. Now, another key issue here is Senegal's relationship with France. This is the 11th presidential election since the end of colonial times, but the country's relationship with Paris still dominates much of the conversations here around election season. Ousmane Sonko in particular says that Macky Sall is too close to Paris and that it is time now to scrap the CFA franc. That's the local currency here, which is pegged to the euro and is partly controlled by Paris. The amount of liquidity that there is within the Senegalese economy is controlled by the Bank of France. So there is a move by the opposition to scrap that currency altogether, establish a new local one. That appears to have pretty broad popular support among Senegalese people, but of course the government and Macky Sall would say that's impractical and won't be good for the economy. So those are some of the key issues that we've seen being contested during this election campaign.
Nadia Massi there for us in Dakar. Now, the UN's top court said that Britain should give up control of the Chagos Islands as soon as possible. The International Court of Justice has delivered a legal opinion that the UK illegally took over the Indian Ocean archipelago from Mauritius before independence in 1968 and then evicted all of the Chagos Islanders. About 2,000 were forced out between 1968 and 1973 to make way for a military base that's under lease to the United States. The Chagos Islanders have welcomed the ICJ's findings in The Hague. However, Britain has rejected the non-binding opinion. Algeria's Prime Minister said that voters would be able to decide whether President Abdelaziz Bouteflika gets a 5th term when polls take place in April. The country's seen major protests against his candidacy. On Monday, lawyers rallied in Algiers against the ailing leader's bid to extend his 20 years in power. Last Friday, tens of thousands of people took to the streets to demonstrate against the prospect. And Zimbabwe's finance ministers said that the country's central bank will buy or sell dollars to manage volatility in the new RTGS currency. Now, that was launched just last week, but many Zimbabweans mistrust the discounted currency and have little faith in the government's ability to keep its value stable. Laurent Berchdecker tells us more.
Godfrey Chinani sells car parts in downtown Harare. He's worried that the RTGS dollar, the new currency introduced by Zimbabwe to help revive the economy, will negatively impact his customers and his business.
When we convert it to rand and US dollar, it's nothing. So it has really affected us because people have less disposable income.
In 2009, Zimbabwe was forced to abandon its national currency and to switch to the US dollar after hyperinflation reached 500 billion. Chronic cash shortages then led to the introduction of a parallel system of bond notes and electronic dollars, but both quickly lost their value as they were traded at a discount on the black market. The decision last week to merge these two virtual currencies into one, the RTGS dollar, was largely welcomed by economists, but much of the population doesn't trust the government to keep inflation and public spending in check and remains wary of the new system.
I think basic commodities are going to disappear from the shelves. The monetary policy is similar to the one that was adopted in 2008 and which never worked.
Last month, thousands of Zimbabweans took to the country's streets to protest a 150% hike in fuel prices. The government's response, a violent crackdown in which over a dozen people were killed and hundreds arrested, did little to help reassure foreign investors, whose trust will be crucial to the success of the country's new currency.
Well, that's it for Iron Africa for now. Thanks for joining us, and do so again if you can. Take care.
Since Moscow's annexation of Crimea, the countries bordering Russia have looked on their giant neighbour with growing distrust. Some, like Estonia and Sweden, are bracing for the worst. But they're less worried by the risk of military escalation than by constant cyber attacks. The spectre of a Cold War 2.0 is hovering over the Baltic Sea.
Reporters on France 24 and France24.com.